Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
Today's sponsor is Well Traveled. This time of year, we're always on the go. With all the activities, stress, and travel, it's easy to feel tired and run down. Maybe you're feeling that way right now. Give your immune system a natural boost with Well Traveled, a drink mix made with plant-based, clinically proven ingredients and no added sugar. It's a better alternative to Emergen-C and Airborne. Just open a packet, mix with water, and enjoy. Right now, you can save 25% by using the code ALLSTAR at checkout on their website. Visit gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar to grab your 25% discount. Again, that's gowelltraveled.com/discount/allstar. Stay well on the go with Well Traveled. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast. Today I have with me a special guest, Nahum Mendoza.
Yep.
Nahum is a golfer, or used to be a golfer, played collegiate at San Diego State, Division I, and went on to have a short professional career. He has now transitioned into professional sales career. And I'm wondering, today we're here to talk about your mental performance with golf and really how all that kind of transpired throughout your career as an athlete. So if you could just start off by introducing yourself a little bit more fully than what I just did, and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, what you did, your career as a golfer, and maybe a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Sure. Yeah. So golf. I mean, I started playing when I was young. Right. I was about 6 years old. My dad got me into it, and it was first started as a way to kind of for us to hang out, play, spend time with each other. And then I started playing tournaments at an early age, was pretty good locally as a junior golfer, and then played all through high school. And then, I didn't really take it seriously really until I got to college, San Diego State. And every year progressively, I just got better, and it became kind of more viewed it more as a career for me throughout the course of my playing. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you started playing golf just as something fun to do with your dad.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what first inspired you to pursue golf? Was your dad, or how did you get started in the sport? Was there anything more to it than that?
Yeah. I mean, it started like that early, but then, once I started playing tournaments, I realized that I just really thrived in a competitive space, and I just really enjoyed it. Competing and actually playing for what felt like something, right?
Okay.
Even if it's, just a small event, when you're 10 years old, you still want to win.
Sure.
Right. So I guess maybe I was inherently born with that competitive drive. I don't know, but it definitely developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you started playing when you were 6, and then within the first couple of years, it sounds like if you were playing competitively by the time you were 10, you already knew that you enjoyed golf for the competition. Yeah,
for the competition, for sure. Okay. And it was great because, I developed a lot of friendships, relationships that I still have to this day.
Okay.
And so that's always great too. That's what I love about sports, I think, in general. It's just, the stuff that could help you personally. You learn, a lot of traits. But yeah, for me, and then I never looked at it when I was young as I'm going to be on the, be a professional or anything like that. It just kind of developed over time. Yeah.
Okay. When you were, probably you've always had fun golfing.
Yeah.
When you were younger, was the fact that golf, was it just fun for you? Or when you first started playing, did you like the challenge?
Yeah.
Was it just kind of that your dad was pushing you, or were you completely committed, fully in from a very young age? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, actually, so my dad, he always says that he kind of had it lucky because it was always me wanting to push myself, and I was always me almost being hard on myself, right? Because I always expected more. I had big expectations, and that's kind of what pushed me early, wanting to just perform to a level that I felt like I could. Yeah.
So you were always pretty competitive from a young age then, and you wanted to perform and get better and be the best version of yourself or the best golfer that you could be.
Yeah.
Okay. So you continued to develop golfing. You played through middle school. You played through high school. Then you went on to have. You went on to play at San Diego State, Division I golf. How many years did you play there?
All 4 years.
All 4 years. Okay. And I believe you told me earlier that you were a walk-on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So actually, like I said, when I was in high school, I just played like local tournaments. Like a lot of the kids that were trying to get recruited to play collegiate were playing like national events, bigger leagues or whatever. And I just wasn't doing that because I didn't really know anything about like getting recruited or what that process even looked like. But I remember my junior year, one year, I did play in one of those kind of like larger events, you could say, but it was local still. It was here in Southern California. And while I was there, I was actually leading the tournament, and the USD, University of San Diego golf coach, and the San Diego State golf coach were watching me.
Did you know that at the time?
Yeah, I did know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause they're decked out in their gear, they make their presence known,
Sure.
But they're watching you. And I think they do that on purpose, just to see how you can handle the pressure. And I didn't win. I finished second, but right afterwards, both of them come up to me like separately, and they were like, "Hey, we'd love to have you on campus. We could do like an unofficial visit, I think it was at the time, and talk about maybe your possible career, playing here." And I was like, "Okay, well, yeah, that sounds fine, sure." I mean, I hadn't reached out to anybody at that point. I just kind of fell in my lap. And then I took an unofficial visit at San Diego State. And he told me that, because they had a better team than USD did at the time. And he told me that they didn't have any scholarship funds for me, but they had a spot, an opportunity. And, I'm lucky enough to where I'm from California. And my parents, my family was able to provide me, the opportunity to play there without the scholarship. So I agreed and went from there. And then I started in 2013 at State. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have an inclination that you wanted to play collegiate and or professional golf at this time? Like at what point did you know? Was it like middle school, high school, where you were like, you knew that you were good enough, or you thought that you're like, I want to be a professional golfer? Like, at what point did you know? Like, were you considering it when you were playing that tournament and the coaches like were watching? Yeah. Were you thinking like, oh, like this is what I want to do? Like, right. Did you know at that point, or were you kind of just like, oh, like, yeah, maybe I could go far with this?
Yeah, I mean it's just every step of the way, like the next phase just kind of came to me. So I never really like looked that far ahead. So like I said, like I hadn't reached out to anybody, and then those coaches approached me. That was my junior year, and then I committed right after that. So now it's real, right? So it's like now, okay, I have a spot on the team. Like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So and then same thing happened in college where, throughout my career I got better, and then I looked at professional golf as a reality. Yeah.
Sure. So you walked on to San Diego State.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of circle back and talk about some more of these things as we go. But you walked on, you played for 4 years.
Yeah.
You then went on to have a professional career.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit about some of the highlights or defining moments of your golf career. Yeah. Now, this could be whether you were junior, high school, college, professional. Like, do you have any moments that stand out to you as like defining moments?
Yeah.
Like tournaments that you won, or like big putts that you hit to like clinch, or like are there? When I say that, like, do you have any defining moments that like stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of them. When I got recruited.
Yeah. Like you have a vivid memory of that tournament and
how I felt.
And the coaches approaching you. Like that was a defining moment, you highlight it, you would say.
For sure. Yeah, because that propelled me to what was, a collegiate career. And then in college, I had some defining moments as well. I won the San Diego, the city amateur event here my freshman year, or the summer going into my sophomore year. I won that tournament. That was a good one for me. And, just from being from here, being local, and like winning that tournament was kind of a really cool accomplishment. And
that was an amateur.
Yeah, it was
tournament?
An amateur. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the San Diego City Amateur.
Okay.
So, and then a few more in college. I could think back to my junior year at I got selected to play at what's called the Arnold Palmer Cup, which was the top 10 American collegiate golfers play against the top 10 European collegiate golfers of that season.
Okay.
And I remember I was like right on the cusp of qualifying, and there was one tournament left, and I had a really good final round. I think I finished like top 5 in the event, and that got me in. And I remember because they announced the teams on the Golf Channel and stuff. And
that's sick.
Yeah, so I saw my name on there, and it was really cool. And then in my professional career, I won my first professional tournament in Long Beach.
Also Southern California.
Southern California, yeah. It was a Southern California event where like, a lot of the professionals in the area played, and I won it. And, I mean, it's always the wins, right, that we think of, like highlights. Yeah,
sure. I mean, you could have defining or I guess highlights. But defining
highlights.
Moments could be like negative things as well.
Yeah,
and those might even stand out more.
Yeah,
we might talk about those a little bit more in the future, but it sounds like you've won some tournaments, particularly in Southern California. Those really stood out to you. Do you have any? I think we talked about this a little bit earlier off the air, but you've won some awards.
Yeah.
I think, right, as well. Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. So my junior year of college, I was the second team All-American. I was the Mountain West Conference Player of the Year as well. And then I represented the U.S. in that tournament I talked about. Those are probably like the biggest awards I've won in college. And yeah.
Okay.
Those are some good ones.
Cool. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a sales professional now. You work, you do sales.
Yeah.
So are you still involved in the golf world at all, or have you completely transitioned out of that now? Like, talk to me about like what your life is now.
Well, I mean, I've kind of, I'm at a point, I've transitioned out of it. But now, I'm focusing more on my sales career. I still play. I'm not a professional anymore. I got what's called my amateur status back, because there's some large amateur events that I would like to play that are over the summer. And, if you win them, you get invited to the Masters, US Open, major championships, stuff like that. So
sure,
that's still on the table for me. I still have golf dreams for sure.
Yeah. You're still a scratch golfer, you would say? Or how would you describe yourself as a golfer to the listeners?
I mean, I joke. I'm like, I'm just a weekend warrior now. I mean, I'll play like once a month, but I still like to shoot in the 60s every time I play.
Sure.
I'll shoot. If it's, I always say like, if it's red, I'm happy. Meaning like if it's under par, I'm happy. Like, but I still got it.
Sure. Yeah. So you could still tee it up with the best of them. Really, you're hitting it from the tips.
You're
playing Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
You go out there and it's still fun for you. You still
you
still love the competition.
Yeah.
That's probably never going to change.
No.
So.
No, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. I mean, that's just in there.
And that's probably a defining feature about you specifically, like competitive drive, and that's probably helped you in your career now, right? Like you're a fairly successful salesman. Like, there's probably a lot of skills that translate over from sports to the professional life.
For sure. Yeah.
Competitiveness being one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just the will to win, if you will. Because what I always say about sales is like, it's rewarding, but every day you start at zero, right? Every day, similar to, it's like if in a commission-based profession, you have to stay hungry. You have to stay hungry, and really, like, no one's there to push you, right? Except yourself. Similar to sports, and that work ethic, that discipline from my golf career has 100% helped me in being, fairly successful in what I'm doing now.
Sure.
And still wanting more at the same time, There's always that balance of like wanting more and also being grateful for what you have.
Correct.
But it's okay to want to be better.
Yeah, that drive to succeed, that drive to want more.
Yeah.
Like propels you to be successful at whatever it is that you do.
Yeah. It's just that fire, call it what you want.
Sure.
But
ambition, passion, dedication, commitment, whatever it is.
Yeah, desire.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay to want more, But
absolutely.
It can't get you kind of in a rut when you feel like, you sometimes with me, I feel like, I'm not, I have had bouts of not feeling good enough. Right. That's always a challenge.
Well, sure. Life is, if we talk about the mental side of things and get a little philosophical on you here, but we've talked about this before. It's like life is constantly this balance, finding this balance between accepting who we are and what we have and wanting more and better for ourselves.
Yes.
Because if we just accept where we are and who we are and what we have right now, maybe we could be happy with living a simple life and not having very much.
Yeah.
But really, I think if you look at it from my perspective, if you're kind of just like accepting and happy with where you are, you're really kind of falling behind.
Yeah.
Particularly we live in San Diego. This is a very fast-paced environment. The cost of living being what it is, the economy, the state of the world, society at large. Like in
general,
really, if you're just standing pat, if you're just status quo, you're really kind of falling behind.
Yeah.
Really. I think I heard a stat recently. I don't know how true this is or not.
Yeah.
But like our wealth is degrading at a rate of like 11% per year.
Okay.
Or something like that. So it's like, the cost of inflation and gas and houses, price of houses and, just population increase and these sorts of things. So really, if you're just standing pat, you're really kind of falling behind.
Yeah.
So it's like, but you also can't, you need to have some happiness with where you are and who you are and what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
That's critical to living a life of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because if you have no happiness with who you are and what you've accomplished, and all you ever care about is getting better and wanting more and moving forward, and it's never good enough, you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah. You're just as unhappy.
So you have to find a balance doing that.
For sure. Yeah. And now like that's what I learned about golf too. It's just the thing about golf is that it's the fairest sport out there because it's all on you. The golf ball doesn't know who's hitting it, Tiger Woods, I'll use him as an example. He still plays, he's gone through a lot of injuries, whatever, but now he's struggling, he's like, he was the best ever, whatever, call what you want. And that's why it's so fair. It's really up to like you, how well you prepare, how clear your mind is, and how accepting you are of the result. And now, like with what's happening with in life, like what you said, the most driven, the most patient, the most accepting are the ones who are going to excel. So it's really like an opportunity, right? Like I think like for me, for example, like when I felt like I was playing my best, I always wanted to go to the hardest golf courses. The harder the course, the better I'm gonna perform in relation to the field. The better I'm gonna perform in the tournament, because I felt that if it's longer, if the rough is higher, if the greens are faster, people are gonna crack. And I always played best at like national events. Like I remember I led the NCAA national championship for 3 rounds. Yeah, my junior year. Struggled the last day.
Okay.
Cracked.
Maybe that's something for us to talk about
for
today,
sure.
But
and that was one. Yeah, and then just to kind of like prelude it, it was 100% mental.
Yeah.
I cracked.
Okay. All right.
Straight up.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Not right now, but that's something for us to dig into certainly today.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you feel like you had an edge the more challenging it was.
Yes.
So, the final round being what it was.
Yes.
Like you still had the mentality that like the harder the course is, the
Yes.
more I'm going to rise above.
Yes.
Like you felt that you had the edge.
Yes. Yeah. The best players, they don't complain. The harder it is, they say good.
Yes.
Make it harder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now all of a sudden I have less people to beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looked at my physical performance as a more of a culprit to my failures than I did my mental performance.
Sure. My swing this,
my
approach this,
Ex-
my
yeah.
putting, my greens in regulation,
my green reading, whatever. Exactly.
Yeah, so it was more of like a physical thing that
Yes.
let you down than it was like
That
the mental preparation.
that's what I thought, right? That's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
But not until I was able to I stepped away and like really reflected on my career and actually started practicing less, right? So
Sure.
I didn't have those same physical skills that I had when I was obviously working, like practicing more. I realized the importance of the mental side because I feel like I'm actually a better player now than I was when I was playing, I because of my mind. Like
Sure.
I use my mind a lot more now than I did when I was playing because I have to.
Sure. So you would say when you were playing, the mental performance side like didn't play much of a part. You weren't really aware of
Exactly.
stress and anxiety management techniques
Yes.
or mindfulness.
Right.
Or you probably had like a pre-shot routine, but
Yes.
you weren't aware that that was like a mental performance technique.
Right.
And so it wasn't until after you stepped away that you learned about these things. And
Yes.
you probably did utilize some of those skills. You maybe didn't categorize them as like mental performance techniques
Yes.
at the time. But it sounds like you didn't really recognize its performance or use mental performance techniques
Yes.
that much, or maybe as much as you could have
Could
or
have.
should have or wish you would have.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that would have had an impact on your performance?
100%. Yeah. It's the old classical tale. If I had known then what I know now.
Sure. Hindsight's 2020.
Exactly.
However you
Monday
wanna-
morning quarterback.
Sure, exactly. Backseat driver, any other way you want to put it.
Yeah.
It's like if we all had the experience now
Mm-hmm.
of when, let's talk philosophically for a minute again.
Yeah.
Like if you knew what you know now at like 10 years old.
Yeah.
or
Oh, yeah.
In high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even 2 years ago. Like we'd be in a totally different place.
Yes. Exactly.
So
So it's like like how do we do that simultaneously, right? How can we learn, how can we learn from a mistake right after the mistake without having to, make more of them, right? So I think like now, like back then, the real mistake was I was misdiagnosing the problem.
right.
I was looking at the physical mistakes as from a physical point of view rather than a mental point of view. What was my mindset like going into that golf?
Sure. But physically, your swing was probably fine.
It's not going to change from one day to the next,
Yeah.
right?
So you were, as you said, misdiagnosing the problem.
Exactly.
What do you think the problem was?
Well, now looking back at it, so preparation going into the shot. So I always say like a lot of the bad golf shots happen before you even hit them. So what's the wind doing? Where's the pin? Where's the place to miss it? Where am I going to aim? Right? What club am I going to use? What shot am I going to hit?
Sure, that's all still very physical though, isn't it?
It is, but mentally you're preparing yourself. Like you're going through a proper sequence of preparation for that golf shot, considering all factors in the event of a mistake, which will most likely happen because we're imperfect most of the time, all the time.
Sure.
So I wasn't considering the miss as much as I am now because now like I don't practice as much. I'm not as sharp.
Sure.
So most of my shots have always been misses.
Sure.
But they used to be a lot sharper, more precise. So but now I miss all the time.
So you prepare for that more?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a lot more, kind of like patient, because I'm a lot more realistic as well. I'm a lot more realistic because, back then, like I've always been like one of the best like iron players, like even now, like not trying to brag, but I would.
No, please.
I would rely on it.
You were a successful, D1 and professional golfer for a reason.
Right. But that skill actually got me into trouble because I would play aggressively because I felt
cocky.
Yeah, maybe a little bit cocky.
Overconfident. Like, I can put this in there within 3 feet.
Yeah, like I'm just going to go right at this pin because like it's easy.
Instead of playing a little bit
safer,
more tactical, smarter, laying up.
Right.
Considering that if you miss that, upper tier of the green by a foot, you're going to be off the green.
Yeah, and I have an impossible chip.
And then you lose 2 strokes.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would do that, right? I would go for the pin and I would airmail the green or whatever, or miss it by a foot because it's a super tucked pin. And then I would have the impossible chip. And then I would blame the chip.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a bad chip.
Sure.
Instead of saying
you're coming downhill on the putt instead of going uphill on the putt.
Yeah. And I would blame my skill on the chip. I would say, oh, what a bad chip. Instead of saying, why do I even have this chip?
So it was more of a strategy flaw.
Yeah. And then all of that, like all of those mistakes compound and create stress.
Sure.
Right. So golf is already stressful. Life is already stressful. Why are you adding more stress to it?
Sure.
So that's kind of what I learned when I kind of took a step back. Right. And also, maturing more with age and stuff. But yeah, it's just, I was making it stressful for myself because I was like playing aggressively when I didn't need to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So as far as the mental performance techniques, like what you were just talking about there, so you're talking about being a little bit more patient, and a little bit more like methodical, and a little bit more like safer with how you approach each shot and the round as a whole. Mm-hmm. So you weren't aware of too many mental performance techniques that you were using, but things like visualization, techniques to hone your focus, right? Because there's a lot of distractions when you're golfing. There's the other players, there's the weather, there's personal life stuff going on. There's the fans, the crowd, the score, right?
The score, the leaderboard.
So visualization, focus things to hone your focus. Pre-shot routines, right? You did use some of these things probably. Did you use those things? Like did you have a visualization routine, for example? Like did you step up to the shot and like close your eyes and imagine the perfect shot? So you were doing some of those things. You just weren't aware that it was a mental performance technique.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we did have some training at San Diego State. We worked with this, mental performance coach. His name's Jay Brunza, and he focused a lot on like pre-shot routine. So my pre-shot routine is always exactly the same, right? That's why it's a routine. So
for every
shot, it's the same.
Putts, drives, chips, always the same.
Yeah. So visualization plays a huge role in that. Huge role. Like, especially because you're hitting the shot before you even hit it, right? So it's like, you have to visualize it. And the thing about golf too is that what's crazy about it is like you could be out there for 4 or 5 hours, but your actual playing time, like how long does it take to hit a golf shot? 30, 40 seconds, and you hit 70 of them. That's like 45 minutes, and you're out there for 4 to 5 hours. So what are you doing the rest of the time? You're just thinking.
In your head.
Yeah, you're just thinking.
So what did you do in between? Like, were you in your head? Do you recall like being in your head?
Yeah.
What did you think about in between shots? Were you chopping it up with your playing partner? Like, were you just totally like stoic and just like not talking to anybody? Like, what were you doing in between?
Yeah. So I mean, I thought a lot about like what you said at the leaderboard. Like, where am I at?
Okay.
Where am I at? Rather than staying present on the next shot.
So you were distracted
100%
by the score instead of focusing on what is my next shot?
Yeah.
What is my strategy on this hole?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like the leaderboard was probably the biggest distraction for me. Like how far back of the lead am I, or how many am I leading by?
Sure.
You know.
And that probably impacted how you played.
100%. Like I said, like, you know, like if I'm 2 shots back, I would think, oh, I need to make 2 birdies. So I would play more aggressively in moments where I shouldn't have.
Right.
And all of a sudden,
the hardest hole on the course.
On the hardest hole of the course, like, oh, I feel like I need to birdie this. It's like, you know, even though the guy who's leading hasn't even played it yet, he has to play it too, right? He's most likely like not going to birdie it.
Right.
Like rather than thinking that way, I would think, oh, I need to do this, and then I would bogey it because I made an aggressive mistake.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I'm even further back now.
Yeah.
And now I'm angry, and now I'm pissed, and then that creates more mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you talk about so far that what we've talked about is that you were aware of using some mental performance techniques.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't really know that much that they were mental performance techniques then. Can you share a time when one of these techniques that we talked about was specifically helpful to you?
Yes.
Like, do you remember a time that you very specifically like visualized a shot and you know specifically that because you did that, it went in, or some kind of focus technique or something to like block out the score? You weren't aware of it at the time, but you decided for some reason, or somebody told you like, forget about the score, like focus on these next 2 holes, you know, and that worked for you.
Yeah. So that happened. Yeah. I could think back to, it was in college. It was the Pacific Coast Amateur. So pretty big event, national amateur event. And I knew I was leading. And I actually ended up finishing in a tie for the lead. So we went into a playoff for the championship. And I remember the very first playoff hole, I hit it just in the rough, and then I hit a pretty good approach shot, but the greens were so fast and hard that it just went over the green, and I was toast, right? Everyone's like, okay, tournament's over, like impossible shot. And I remember like just standing over it, like it was a flop shot, so you gotta have the face wide open. It's in the rough, and I had very little green to work with, and I had a point on the green. It's like, okay, I could see it, you know, I could see myself coming into the shot. The ball's going to pop up here, has to land right there soft and just trickle out. And wherever it ends up, that's where it is.
Sure.
And I had a divot that I was looking at on the green, and I landed it right on it. Like and it worked out perfectly. It rolled out to like 3-4 feet, made the putt, extended to the playoff. Then I lost on the next hole.
Okay.
But I remember because like there was at that point that was like the biggest crowd I had played in front of, because like all of the participants after the tournament, they wanted to watch the playoff. You know, members of the golf course wanted to watch it. Volunteers. There was probably like 150 people watching the playoff to 200 people. Fairly big crowd. And I remember that shot just got a big, you know, reception.
Sure, a big roar.
Yeah,
of sorts.
Yeah,
not PGA quality like Tiger.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Roar,
but definitely,
people were excited.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that was cool. People were filming it.
Yeah.
So
you felt the pressure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Visualized the shot.
Yeah.
You went through your pre-shot routine.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what you wanted to do, and you executed.
Yeah. That's one shot that really comes to mind. Even though I didn't win the tournament, that was like a really big moment for me, because I knew I did it. Like I executed what I needed to do in that point, you know, in front of the crowd. Not that it should matter, but it does matter. Like, let's be real.
Did you feel the stress of the increased like number of spectators?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I thought like if I mess this up, that's going to be so embarrassing. Like
if you just like
chunk it right in front of me. Yep. It's just like, oh.
Or skull it and it goes all the way through the green out the other side. Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh. But yeah, no.
The disappointment of the crowd.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was got a good reception. Okay. I think back on that a lot.
Okay.
That was fun.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were successful in using some mental performance techniques, even though you weren't really aware of it at the time.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about setbacks.
Yeah.
So missed cuts,
yeah.
challenging rounds, challenging shots.
Yeah.
recovering after a tournament that you should have won.
Yeah.
Like, how did you handle that?
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't handle it as well. Cause again, I became a professional once I graduated, and it happens at every phase. Like, you think you're a great high school player, and then you get to college and you realize you're not all that. You think you're a great collegiate player, you turn pro, you really realize you're not all that. It's a whole different animal. And what I didn't know at the time is that I was good enough, but everyone's good enough. You stand on a professional driving range, and it's like nobody misses a shot. Everyone's so good. You stand on a professional putting green, everyone's so good. So what's really the separator? It's really comes down to like your mental. But same mistakes. I mean, I always looked at the physical side of it. Like, I miss a cut. It's like, oh, where was it? It's like, I hit a bad tee shot, and that's what cost me the tournament. But it's like, well, what was I thinking about really going into that tee shot? So for me, what I know now is that, like, a lot of the stresses that we feel, or at least in my case, you're really nervous over a golf shot. But what's behind that nervousness? What's behind that stress? A lot of it is a lack of preparation going into it, right? It could have been from a practice round. Like, you don't really know what's out there on the hole. You don't really know, like, if you miss right, what the next shot is going to look like, or versus if you miss left. Whereas, like, you play the course more times, or you're more familiar with it, then I know that right's fine, and all of a sudden you feel more comfortable. Or I know that if I hit it a different club here and lay back or whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
You feel more comfortable. So giving yourself, like, through preparation, like, margin of error is huge in golf specifically. And I think in most sports, like, I mean, you look at baseball, like, the best batters are the ones who get on base, right? But then you look at
3 out of 10 times.
4 out of 10
Hall
times.
of Famer.
Yeah, 3 out of 10 times. If you get on base 3.5 out of 10 times, then you're
an all-star.
You're an all-star. So, but then you look at their batting averages and they're below 3. It's like, wait, so this guy's hitting, 2.5 times out of 10, but he's getting on base 3.5 times. So that means that they know when not to swing.
Sure.
Right? So they're getting walked. So the best batters know, not only are great hitters, but they also know when not to swing. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, they allow margin of error for the pitcher, right? They know that the pitcher is not going to be all that. I don't have to swing every time.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's really kind of like the best players are. They know they have that margin of error. I don't have to swing.
Sure.
Right.
So you would say, to kind of reiterate the question, so handling setbacks, right?
Yeah.
You would say that you handle setbacks kind of preemptively. You first of all try to avoid them.
Yes.
By preparing ahead of time and understanding the course and the weather conditions and not so much the competition, because golf is a very individual sport. Yeah. But let's say that you do have a setback on a round. Let's say it's a 3 or a 4 round tournament. Yeah. You don't play very well the first or second round. Hopefully you make the cut. But let's say you don't play well the first round. Right. So you handle that setback by maybe preparing for the second round a little bit better. Yeah. You're looking at the layout of the greens a little bit more. Exactly. Checking out pin locations. Yep. Going back through your notes, because probably had notes about, like,
for sure,
distances to this bunker from the tee, and
correct.
Where should I lay it? So strategically, you would sort of handle setbacks by becoming a little bit more familiar with how you should be playing, right? Rather than thinking that it was just like a physical issue. Yeah,
that's what I would do now. But
that's what you would do now.
That's what I would do now. Yeah, but back then I would go straight to the range. Right.
So that's how you would handle setbacks back then, was like physically,
like, incorrectly.
Let me go, like, hit another 200 balls.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Exactly. And I think this could apply to any sport, right? Sure. It's like, so it goes back to, like, kind of properly diagnosing the mistake, right? And I look back, and a lot of the time it was mental mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. Before I even hit the golf shot.
Sure.
And then I would just go to the range. But now that's how I would approach it. I would look at, like, okay, so if I had a poor first round back then, I would try to go all out the next round.
Even more aggressive.
I
need to shoot lower.
Yeah, I need to shoot lower. Right.
Which, I mean, to make the cut, like, there's some truth to that.
There is. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but like,
yeah,
at the same time, like, it just kind of has to come to you.
Right.
Right. It just kind of has to come to you.
Yeah.
So
there are occasions where the score does matter.
100%.
And that you may be down by a shot or two coming up on the last couple of holes.
Right.
And like, it will actually physically affect how you play.
Yes.
Because like at a certain point, like in golf, like whoever shoots the lowest score wins.
Is going to win.
And you can be prepared and familiar with the holes and mentally calm. But at a certain point, if you par the last couple of holes and you're down by a couple strokes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So there are certain occasions in which you do need to play more aggressively.
Yes.
But
there is.
You probably shot yourself in the foot to be in that position to begin with.
Exactly. What happened before then? Like,
right.
Why were you in a situation to where you had to birdie the last hole to make the cut?
Right.
Like, right?
Yeah.
What happened the previous 35 holes before the 36-hole cut?
Right.
That put you in that situation.
In sports, that's a very classic example of, like, I'll give basketball for an example, right? We're talking about golf here, but basketball, and the same is true for golf, but I'll use basketball just as a separate sport example, and we can talk about it with respect to golf as well. In basketball, for example, the last, 2 minutes are often under a microscope.
Yes.
Probably in golf too.
Timeouts every 5 seconds.
Hole or two,
yes.
Right? It's like, oh, this foul, this free throw, this shot, like, it's all like magnified.
Yes.
Right. But every shot counts the same.
Yes.
Free throws, whether you make them in the first quarter or not, count the same as free throws that you make with 2 seconds left in the game.
Exactly.
The shots that you hit in golf on the first hole count the exact same as the ones on the last hole.
Right.
So you need to put yourself in a good position. Hopefully that you're not coming from behind.
Yes. You're absolutely correct. Like someone put it for me, like they framed it to where it's like, okay, you walk on a curb on the sidewalk, right? It's very easy, right? But all of a sudden put that curb 100 feet in the air. It's the same curb, but why is it so much more challenging now, right? So that's
your legs are all shaky.
Oh
and
yeah,
queasy. But it's this. In gymnastics, it's the same thing, actually. Yeah. Gymnasts practice balance beam on the floor. Mm-hmm. It's the same, 3 inches wide, I think,
whatever
3 or 4 inches wide.
Uh-huh.
And they practice on that, and they can hit their flips and their tumbles and their whatevers and stuff. And then you lift it up 3 feet off the floor, and it's like, my God. It's the same beam, but it's totally different.
Yes.
Because the consequences of failing are so much more magnified.
Exactly.
Given the circumstances.
Yes. Yeah.
So golf is no different.
It's a 3-foot putt, right? Yeah. But a 3-foot putt on the putting green is a lot different than a 3-foot putt to win the Masters.
Sure. And it's different on the first hole of a tournament versus the 18th hole.
Yes.
But they all count the same.
Yeah. So it's like doing the best you can early, even before you start the tournament, preferably, to where you're minimizing the possibility of having stress as much as possible.
Yeah. So to that point, what do you wish you would have known about the mental side of golf as a younger player? Is it the preparation? Mm-hmm. Is that what you wish you would have focused?
Yes.
Or mentally preparing? Because physically you probably hit 1,000 balls a day.
Yeah.
But mentally, were you visualizing the day before?
Mm-hmm.
And were you meditating?
Mm-hmm.
And were you making sure that your stress was handled so that you came into the round with a calm, clear mind?
Yeah.
Were you doing these things ahead of time, or were you just kind of showing up and thinking that you were talented enough physically to do it? Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it was more kind of like the second one. I would just kind of rely on my talent and my work ethic of what I would do on the range and on the putting green beforehand. Be like, oh yeah, my swing feels good, my putting feels good. But, every course is different. Every tournament's different.
Right.
And, I just relied too much on that versus actually preparing. So that's kind of like going back to what I wish, right? And yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't really wish for it because I needed to experience all that to know what I know now. So what I know now, right, is where I'm going to spend my time focusing is what I call, stress prevention, tactics through preparation, if you will.
Yeah.
Just kind of made that up, but
Sure.
But yeah, it's like a lot of the times, again, going back, is like when we feel stressed, right? And there are mental performance tactics like visualization, breathing that help with that. But the best, like relying on that alone in that moment is very difficult, if not impossible. So it's like preventing that, right, is the best way. How do you prevent that? For me, preparation, patience. Patience has been huge.
Yeah.
Patience is huge, right? Like playing safer, par is okay. Bogeys are not the end of the world. You'll get it back. Like stay present on the shot at hand. A round of golf is just an accumulation of individual shots, like you just said. They all count the same.
So you're a lot more patient now
Yes.
than you were.
Yes.
So you feel like if you had one skill to translate that about, mental performance or preparedness now to when you were playing before, it would be
patience.
Be more patient.
100%. Yeah, for me. Right.
Sure.
For me. Yeah, patience is the big one. Yeah. And the more prepared you are, the less stressed you'll be. The more patient you can be.
Right. You're not going to find yourself in those awkward situations of being down. I mean, some guy might be playing out of his mind either way. Like, and you can't control that. But at least you didn't shoot yourself in the foot to get there. You played your best game. And you left it all out there on the golf course. Yeah. And like, if somebody just played better than you, they played better than you. But at least it wasn't because you were impatient or frustrated or stressed or fuming about, you still can't get that double bogey out of your head from 2 holes ago. Yeah. And that's still impacting the shot that you're about to take right now because you can't believe that you
how could I have been so stupid or
doubled
whatever.
that hole that you should have birdied and now it's like, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the shot that you're about to hit.
Exactly.
So why is that still bothering you?
Yep.
Did that happen to you?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, stayed in the past. The past affects the future. Now, like a lot of players talk about like game plan. Like this is my game plan for this hole. Like this is how I play this hole. And I would have it going into it, but then I would double the previous hole, and then all of a sudden the game plan shifts.
Sure.
I'm hitting driver now.
Instead of 3-iron and laying up a little bit because you felt like you had to get a little closer.
Yes, I got to make up for the last hole.
Yes,
but that's the wrong approach. I had to hit driver from being angry a bunch of times to figure it out. It's like, but I didn't need to do that.
Sure.
And then I would hit a bad drive, and I would blame the drive. I would blame my swing or whatever.
Right. Right. Did you have any techniques that you used to stay composed?
Yeah.
In high pressure situations, like, did you ever catch yourself like in that mindset, or did you have a coach that would like, hey, Nahum, like bring it back? Like, did you have any techniques that you used to stay composed in high pressure situations, or not? I had learned some techniques, like breathing techniques. Yeah. It's like I think it's called, I don't even remember what it's called. The 4-3-7 or something, where you inhale for 4, hold for 3, exhale for 7. Sure. Right. And then just focus on your breath. Yeah. That helped. But yeah, I definitely didn't, focus on those techniques as much as I should have. Yeah. Yeah. Like high pressure situations were extremely high pressure because I didn't have that many techniques. Okay. Yeah. And you feel like that had a pretty significant impact on maybe multiple tournaments? Oh yeah, the multiple. NCAA, national championship tournament that you were referencing earlier. Yep. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
What happened there? Like you said earlier that you were leading for the first 3 rounds.
Yep.
You must have been feeling out of this world. Like, I'm going to win this tournament. I'm playing the best golf. Like, this is unbelievable.
Yep.
And then, like, what happened?
So, yeah, you literally just said it. Like, that's what happened. Like, I was focused on the future, right? Because I'm leading the national championship. Like, you know, there's cameras everywhere. This thing's televised, whatever. It's like, and oh my God, like if I win this, like my career is going to be like, wow, like, you know, companies are going to approach me. I'm going to be offered, you know, money, like sponsorships, right?
So you're already thinking
possible PGA Tour exemptions, you know, like I'm all of a sudden now I'm looking at dollar signs. It's like, wait a minute. Like we still got 18 holes to go. Right.
So after the 3rd round, you were already thinking about that stuff.
Yes, foreshadowing, you know. And it's good to like visualize like yourself winning, but at the same time, you have to come back.
Sure.
You have to come back to the present. Like, wait a minute. Like, okay, we still got some work to do.
Yes.
Right. And I was just so focused on like the future.
Yeah.
That
what if I win? And
what if? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And that creates anxiety.
Sure.
It can. Pressure. Yeah. You know.
Because then you're like, well, now I need to win.
Yeah.
And what if I this or what if I that?
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. For sure. Like,
so what happened exactly?
Yeah. So I mean, I start the round. I got off to a pretty good start actually. I think I was still leading after the first few holes, and then I hit a tee shot. I remember it was like the 5th or 6th hole, something like that, in the rough, and I had kind of a tree in my way. This was in Eugene, Oregon. So there's a lot of trees on the golf course. I had a tree in my way, and the smart shot would have been to kind of pitch out and, you know, hit on the green, take your bogey, get out of there, possibly make par. But, you know, I was like, you know, I got a little bit of a gap here. I think I can get this like pretty close to the green or even on the green. Boom, drilled a tree straight down. All of a sudden now I'm in the same mess. So stress is building up, right?
Yeah. Frustrated about that shot. Should have just played it out.
Yeah. Why didn't I? Yeah.
Yep.
And then like, oh my God. So then now I chip out. But now I'm making like, now it's double option bogey versus the bogey option par.
Sure.
I make double, and you know, at that point, you know, I start falling back, and it's like mentally, it was really hard for me to kind of forgive myself quickly from that mental mistake. So from then on, like honestly, I was just kind of behind the 8 ball and mentally just out of it. Yeah.
You fell out of the lead. The mental kind of just
the wheels start spinning.
Yep, the wheels came off a little bit, and then you probably started to play a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, even more aggressive.
You're like, I need to, you know, catch back up. And in your mind, you had already thought like I'm winning, and now you're not winning anymore. And then like,
I feel the tournament slipping.
Disappointment,
frustration,
people.
Anger.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And but now, like, there's no chance I would have gone for that shot. Like, if that tree's there, I'm chipping out. So, but that needed to happen to me. So it kind of goes back to kind of like my trend of mental mistakes of aggression, right? Rather than being patient. It all kind of comes back to that. It's like a patient person takes the smart shot. A patient person takes the smart shot, hits it on the green, he might make par. And all of a sudden, now you've built momentum, right? You created an opportunity to build momentum, right? Rather than crush it. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about perspective a little bit. So going back to that example where you were talking about the shot that you hit from behind the tree in the NCAA championship. Let's say that you had played that shot differently.
Yeah.
Let's say that you had played it safe. You had chipped it out instead of, you know, taking the risky shot.
Yeah.
Is that then an opportunity to sort of build some momentum on the round instead of maybe falling behind?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like that perspective shift. I would say, like, you know, at that time I was thinking like, oh, if I chip out, like it's going to be way harder to make par than if I pull the shot off. Wrong perspective, right? Rather than saying, oh, I chip out, right? I'm eliminating the possibility of making double completely, and I can still make par. And if I pull that off, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that builds momentum because I'm saving a shot, right? and you make bogey, I mean, it's not a big deal.
It's not.
Yeah. So it's like shifting that perspective from, oh my God, it's going to be way harder to make par, to wait a minute, I'm going to eliminate double completely, and I could still make par. And if I pull it off, I'm going to feel really good.
And that's something that you kind of have the wisdom to have that perspective now. Back then, you weren't really thinking about that at all.
Right. Yeah.
So that's maybe a skill
for sure
that you wish that you would have had back then.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I mean, there's a lot of philosophy, I guess you could say, to this. But I mean, that's kind of what comes with like being successful in anything. You got to have like some philosophical traits and like really like analyze things. And so, like perspective is a big thing, because there's always a glasses half empty, half full. There's always a way to look at it half full, right? With any situation, even in life, there's always a positive twist to it. Like, oh, I lost my job. Like, oh my God, I lost my job. Wait a minute. Well, now I have an opportunity to, find something new. There could be something better out there. I might be able to start my own business or whatever it is. Like how many success stories come from failure? Most of them, all of them, like, so having that shift, that openness to having that shift in perspective, I think is huge. Yeah. And
that's something that gets talked about a lot in pretty much every different sport, is kind of that perfect time in your career where you hit sort of the mental and physical prime at the same time. Yeah. And a lot of athletes across any sport, and probably true for golf as well, is when you're younger, you probably are a little bit more physically talented and gifted, a little bit more explosive, a little bit more flexible, a little bit stronger, more powerful, but the mental side isn't quite there.
Exactly.
And it takes a little bit longer for that to catch up. Yeah. So I think a lot of athletes, they talk about their prime being between the ages. I mean, it's different for people, between like
in their late 20s.
26 to 32.
Yeah, sometimes in the early 30s.
Your physical attributes are still there. Yeah. But you've had time to develop the mental game. You understand the game kind of slows down. Yeah. You understand it a little bit more fully, like from end point to end point. Yeah. And so probably now, you're a little bit older, you're a little bit wiser. Yeah. You still play, although not professionally, but you're kind of, if you were still playing professionally, this would be probably the time that you would be
entering. I think I would just be entering
your prime. Yeah. Like playing your absolute best golf. Because you still obviously have the physical gifts. Yeah. Now you're aware of like these mental gifts. Yeah. So the direction I want to take this is, a big part of the reason that we're doing this podcast is to give you the opportunity to share your experiences. Yeah. But then also what we're trying to accomplish here is really tie this back into our listeners who might be seeking some information about mental performance techniques and maybe what they can do to improve their game. Yeah. So sort of, if you would vicariously live through our perhaps younger listeners who might be listening to this podcast, what sort of advice and wisdom would you bestow upon our listeners about like things that you've learned that you didn't, you either weren't aware of or you didn't implement when you were younger that now? Like we talked about perspective being one of them. Yeah. Patience. Like what would you tell our listeners about like, what should they be doing that maybe you didn't do that now that you can kind of prematurely or like give them like ahead of a time that they might learn on their own, right? Like what would you say to them? Like what should they do mental performance wise?
And I think like kind of going back to the patience is a big thing, because if you're young, like you want to, we all want it now, we want everything
instant
now.
Gratification. That's just society at large right now, so that's an even bigger thing now.
So maybe it was patience is a big one, because you just said it, right? Most athletes, if you're a defensive lineman in the NFL, it might be a little bit different. You're going to have to perform pretty quick, like in your early 20s. But most athletes, most sports, even the NFL, like Tom Brady, he still won a ring in his 40s, right? Sure. So knowing that, right? It's like, your prime is most likely going to be in your late 20s, early 30s, right?
So be patient, even if you're not winning tournaments, even if you're not, doing your best.
Yes.
Like give it some time.
Give it time.
Develop.
It'll come, right, to develop.
Don't rush it.
Right.
Don't press it.
Don't press it. Focus on what level you're at now and what you need to do to just improve, in golf terms, one shot, half a shot, right? Like the next, really focus on like what the actual next step is, right? We have an end goal in mind, right? Whatever it may be, but there's always a next step to get there. Tiny improvements, and then they add up to the big overall improvement. Sure. So that would be like, that kind of goes back to patience as well, because it requires a lot of patience because you're going to make mistakes. We're all human.
Sure.
And I would say that's huge. Like really focusing on like the immediate next step.
Okay. So the immediate next step. So let's break patience down a little bit more, because somebody that's listening might be like, well, either they think they're patient already.
Right.
But as a mental performance coach, what I do when I work with people is I break things down into like actionable steps.
Right.
So like, what could a golfer do right now? Whether they're younger or whether they're,
regardless of skill level,
it doesn't matter. Like being patient is really like, the saying patience is a virtue, right?
Right.
But like, what does that mean exactly? If you were like, be patient, be more patient.
Right.
I myself have been frustrated by people telling me that over the course of my life. Like, I want this now. I want this job. I want, that relationship or whatever. It's like, and people are like, oh, be patient. And it's like, that can almost be frustrating for somebody to say that.
Yeah.
So like, if we break down patience into like actionable steps.
Right. Okay.
So as a golfer, what does that mean exactly? Like, be more patient.
Yeah. So actually, so you're right, because like people would tell me that all the time, be patient.
Probably frustrated you.
Yeah, it is frustrating because so I've reworded that to become patient.
Okay.
So what's the difference, right? So it's like, it goes back to the personal life thing. You kind of have to link both, right? I'm not being patient. I have become patient, right? So just now, earlier this morning, like when we met for this, I was looking for a parking spot and I couldn't find a parking spot. It took me a while to find a parking spot. But, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been like frustrated, like, oh my God, like there's no parking spots. But I've become cursing, whatever, like blaming the whatever, blaming the guy who just took that spot right in front of me.
Yeah.
Blaming the guy who parked crappy, he didn't open up a spot.
Yeah, there's half a spot that's available.
Yeah, well, if he had just parked a little, no. It's like, no. But I've, become more patient, right? So, it's like, something's going to pop up, there's going to be a parking spot.
Understanding that it will take time.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
It's not going to happen immediately.
Yeah.
So like, as far as actionable steps, understand that, let's bring this back to golf then.
Yeah.
So like being patient, right? It's not the end of the world if you don't win this tournament.
Yeah.
Or it's not the end of the world if you don't make this cut or this shot.
Right.
Like, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So have an understanding that it will take time.
Yep.
And try to step back from the frustration.
Exactly. And it kind of goes in line with like perspective as well, because to become patient, you need a certain perspective, right? So like, and it goes back to like, I made a mistake, but hey, like there's still plenty of golf ahead of me. I'm focused on what I need to do, this immediate next step. What can I do right now to help me become patient, right? And it always kind of comes back to like becoming present and having a perspective on opportunity rather than, like fear based. So they kind of go hand in hand together. What I've learned is, and becoming patient takes time, right? Like, becoming patient, the ironic thing, it's kind of almost like it's ironic because to become patient you need to be patient, right? It's
like, which came first,
the
chicken or
the egg, right?
Sure.
And at what point did I you just get, for me, I just got frustrated of being frustrated, just like, it's just like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's actually easier to let things slide. It's actually easier to forgive yourself because it's exhausting to not. It's exhausting to live in the past. It's exhausting to be frustrated. Draining.
Yeah.
Completely draining.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I was just like drained of being drained.
Sure.
So yeah, like I just, shifted my perspective.
Yeah.
And that has allowed me to become more patient rather than being patient. Now I don't have to try to be patient.
Yeah.
Because I have become that version of myself who is more patient.
So maybe an actionable step related to patience and perspective would be for our listeners, golfers, whether they're younger or, whatever point in their career they are, and this is a mental performance coaching perspective coming from me here, would be to have self-awareness.
Yes.
Which is easy to say. And again, a lot of these like sound easy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take a minute to just mention the fact that mental performance training is just like physical training.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a muscle.
So you have to train it. It's not
right.
It's not something that's going to happen overnight.
No.
It's not something that's going to happen next week or next month or next year, really, but you'll get better at it.
Yeah.
Just like anybody who's ever been in the gym or participated in any sport understands that like building muscle takes time.
Yep.
Okay. Getting better at your golf shot takes time.
Right.
Right. Like you didn't just go from hitting your driver 200 yards to bombing it 320. Like you went from 200 to 205.
Yeah, exactly.
To 207 to whatever, and like over time. So like mental performance techniques are the same thing. So for our listeners, understand that this, what we're talking about here is, which really ties into the idea of patience, perspective, is that you might be at a point where you are using some mental performance techniques, or maybe you're not using any right now, and you recognize the importance of them in elevating your game to the next level. Understand that it does take time,
experience
and patience. So self-awareness and self-reflection, taking that sort of step outside of yourself, if you will, whether you're on the course, whether it's after a round, this is an actionable step that you can take, is to, and I think you mentioned this earlier, actually, you would take a look back after the round. And at the time you thought that it was like physical things. So maybe our listeners are also doing that. They're like, oh, am I swinging this? Am I swinging that? But like, take a step back out after the round, or it could be during a round. That's a little bit more advanced, like in between shots. Like we were talking about earlier.
That is advanced,
right? Your round lasts 5 hours. Right. You're only hitting golf balls and like approaching and whatever for 45 minutes.
Sure.
So in between those shots, sort of an intermediate to advanced technique is like reflecting. Self-reflection on how I'm feeling and how I'm playing right now. That's what we aspire to get to the point of like actually having some self-reflection and awareness during the round. Okay?
That is advanced.
That ties into like focus and achieving flow state and these sorts of things. But a very actionable thing is after the round. Okay, you can go back and look at was I patient? Did I play this shot incorrectly? How could I have played that differently? To your
what could have been my thought? How could I have improved my thought process going into it? To
your story about the NCAA championship. Again, we'll keep going back to that. Like after that, you probably thought back and reflected whatever this and that. That's a very actionable step. Having self-awareness. So
I like that. So kind of to add to that, and like the first, to properly diagnose it, you have to have the consideration of, your mentality and your mental performance as even a factor in your overall performance.
You need to even be aware that that's a thing.
Exactly.
Which back then you probably weren't.
I really wasn't.
And a lot of people might not be. Which is part of the purpose of what we're talking about. Why we're bringing this to light.
Exactly.
We're talking about this. Make people aware of this, and then they can do something about it.
Exactly. And and in order to know what the next step is, you have to properly diagnose like your current situation, right? Like, and that means considering all factors in your performance. Like, if regardless of sport, regardless of what you're doing, right? There's both. There's the physical side and the mental side. So really, really like taking that mental side, like you just said, as as a part, it's as a part of it, as a factor, like if it was a bicep, if you're training your biceps, right? Well, it's the same thing. You're training your mind, right? So you're constantly analyzing it. You're constantly, aware of where your mental state is so that you can improve it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Having that ability to diagnose it properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other techniques that you're aware of now? Being aware of, if we're talking about the professional golf scene, any things that you see guys doing now or that they've talked about that have been beneficial to them, like pre-shot routines, visualization, breathing techniques, focus, right? Like, when you're playing in tournaments and so forth, pressure and rowdy fans,
right?
How do you, like, somebody says something to you and that like really gets under your skin? Like, are there any techniques that you're aware of that, you could say that?
Yeah. So like one thing, like everyone has their own like techniques or tactics. Everyone's different, but one thing that everybody has in common is like staying present, right? Which sounds really easy. But how do we do that? We all have our different ways. But like for me, kind of going back to like the 3-foot putt, right? Whether it's to win the Masters or on the putting green, like now what I do is I focus more on like what I need to do on the putt. Like it's a right edge putt. It's a right edge putt. Yeah. I'm not thinking this putt's to win the tournament or this putt is, if I miss it, this, that, what's going to happen? No.
Just this putt.
Just this putt, and it's right edge with this speed. Like really, really come back to that.
Yeah.
Really, really focus in on that. Like exactly what you need to do, right? What the task is on hand and what you need to do to execute it properly. We all know what that is, right? Whether you're a pitcher, whether you're a hitter, whether you're a first baseman, whatever. I mean, they have less time to think, right? It's more reactive, but it's still the same thing. You know what to do and just focus on that as much as possible.
So focus, like honing your focus.
Yes.
Because there's two different sort of fields of awareness or focus.
Yeah.
For the listeners, there's a broad or an external or a wide sense of focus.
Yeah.
So in the golf context, that would be being aware of the course conditions,
yes. aware
aware of your competitors, aware of the score,
yep.
the fans, geographically, like weather conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Even so much as like the layout of the upcoming hole,
yep.
right? That's a broad external focus.
Yep.
And then there is a narrow internal focus.
Correct.
For example, just this shot, like, am I going to hit a draw? Am I going to hit a fade?
Yeah.
What is the lie of the ball
look
like? Where am I landing it?
Exactly.
This is very narrow focused.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and really, it's important to be able to shift your focus between the two.
Yes, yeah.
Because we need to get a lay of the land.
Right, where you're more creative.
We don't want to necessarily play to the scoreboard because that can be distracting.
Yes.
But you do need to be aware of the score because it can impact how you play.
Sure.
If you're ahead by 5 strokes with 2 holes left, you're probably going to play safer.
Correct.
Than if you're ahead or behind or tied or whatever. So like that does matter.
Exactly, it does.
But on a shot by shot basis,
yes,
you need to be able to narrow your focus and focus on just this shot.
Exactly.
Because the external factors being what they are can be distracting from you hitting the shot that you need to hit right now. Because that stuff doesn't matter to the shot that I've decided that I'm about to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Seeing the lay of the land, right? So prior to hitting the shot, like, okay, there's a bunker there, the pin is here, the rough is here. You're looking at all those factors to come up with a conclusion on what to focus on. Like, okay, based on all these calculations that I made, it's 132 and I'm aiming there. That's what I'm thinking about.
And then you narrow your focus
exactly.
to the shot. Maybe you're visualizing the trajectory, you're
yep.
picking your club.
Yep. I've already done all that, right? Like I've picked my club, I've seen the lay of the land, I know where I need to hit it, and I know what the number is, and that's what I'm thinking about, right? Whereas, and how do we minimize stress? Like the more you know the lay of the land, the more you know going into it, the more comfortable you can feel because you know that you've made the correct decision, right?
Yeah.
So there's eliminating doubts.
Yeah. We talked about that a little bit earlier, the preparation. So going into the round, knowing the pin position, you know, the yardages and all this kind of stuff. So all of these mental techniques tie together.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's to perform at your best, really everything needs to tie together, the mental and the physical.
Yeah.
But my stance is that at the highest level, and I'll actually give you an example from tennis now. So just a little bit of a tangent, a little segue here.
Yeah.
I think it was a story from either Rafael Nadal or Roger Federer.
Okay.
If you go and look at the top 500 tennis players in the world, and again, this is true for golf.
Yeah.
Well, I'll continue with the tennis example first. If you go and look at the top 500 tennis players in the world practicing, just volleying with each other, or even just like a almost fully match point speed, it looks like there's almost no difference.
They're exactly the same.
And how they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
But what differentiates the champions or the best or the highest quality competitors or the ones that are winning from those that are a tier below them, the ones that are getting second place or not making the cut or whatever.
Just missing out on the qualifier or whatever.
The mental piece of it, the grit, the determination, the preparedness, the ability to focus, breath, all of these things. Like they are better mentally. They don't crumble under pressure. The umpire or the referee makes a bad call. They're not slamming their rackets. They're not throwing their golf club in the water.
Yeah.
And it's the same with golf. If you look at the top 500 golfers
they're
on the
all
driving
so
range,
good.
It looks exactly the same. You would not be able to tell.
They're all so good.
But the top competitors, the guys that win more,
it's
your
the mind.
Tiger Woodses, your Rory McIlroys, your John Rahms, your whoever, Justin Thomas, right? Like all these guys, like
it's their mind.
Their mind is stronger.
It is.
And they talk about this.
Yeah, they do.
And they practice this.
Yeah.
And they have mental performance coaches that they work with.
Yeah.
And it's mental fortitude that, because there's going to be,
that's the separator.
There's going to be extenuating, difficult circumstances. You're going to get a bad bounce. You're going to find yourself in the bunker. You're going to be behind a tree.
Yeah.
There's going
to be stress.
Whatever. A fan is going to say something ridiculous to you that like fires you up. Yeah. Like if that gets under your skin, you're probably going to be in for a bad time. Yeah. But if you can just be like, whatever, on to the next shot, and that doesn't bother you, you're going to be a lot more likely to have better results.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's exactly. And a lot of the time it's like you just said, like, if some fan says something and
which you have no control over.
But that's why your perspective is so important, because like if you perceive it as something as distracting, like, oh, that guy just pissed me off or whatever.
Sure.
Whereas you could say like, oh wow, like at least I have fans.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
At least there's people watching me.
Sure. Exactly. Which is a great perspective. Yeah. As a matter of fact, philosophically, the people that typically have the most like haters, if you will,
are the most successful. Yeah.
The most people that are like jealous or like flaming them, or like the LeBron Jameses.
Exactly.
You can't look at a post about LeBron James without there being like haters.
Exactly. So he probably looks at it and says like, hey man, like I have haters for a reason.
It's probably comical to a certain point.
Right.
So like on the golf course, like if you're very successful, as polite as golf fans are supposed to be. You're probably going to get somebody that's, says something under their breath as you walk by,
you hear them,
or whistles right before you hit. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like you can't let that affect you.
Right.
I mean, Tiger Woods has talked about that
a bunch. Yeah.
With I think either with his dad or now how he's coaching his son. Charlie, right?
He would purposely try to distract him.
He literally said, I think it was in reference to Charlie Woods.
Yeah.
He said, I try to get under his skin.
Yeah.
I say stuff off the cuff, whatever. I try to distract him because Tiger said, I know that if Charlie can get to the point that he can tune that out, to like that distraction from me, then he's going to be bulletproof.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And just having that shift in perspective is like huge because, yeah, I mean, like as even him, like, oh my God, my dad's pissing me off. It's like, oh, but you know, it may sound like fufurufu or like whatever, like peace and love, but hey, like at least I have a dad who's here with me. Right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Oh, wow. How lucky am I? You know, it really is that simple, right? Just saying, like looking at it one way, like LeBron James, like, oh my God, I have so many haters. Oh, poor me. Like, no, like, hey, I have haters for a reason because I'm the freaking best.
Yeah. I mean, to continue that story, he's said, like, pressure is a privilege. Like, not everybody gets to perform at the highest level.
Yeah.
So you can either look at it as like a negative, like a stressful thing, or it's like, this is good.
Yeah.
Like to feel pressured, to feel stressed, to feel anxious because I'm playing for something
that means I'm
matters.
in contention. Yeah.
Right. You could, I think the rest of that saying is like, you could be playing for nothing at all, or not even playing.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, well, then you're not stressed or anxious or pressured, but like, you're not playing for anything.
Yeah. And like, you hear that, like the best players, like the best golfers, like they'll be in interviews, like going into the final round, and they'll say like, I'm really looking forward to be in a position to where I'm really nervous, because that means I'm in a position to where it really matters.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they say it to like actually try to like self kind of like manipulate themselves, right?
Sure.
Like, oh, but they're trying to get in that frame of mind.
Yeah.
They're actively trying to get in that frame of mind, of that perspective, to where it's like, yes, like I'm really nervous. But that's a good thing, because that means I'm doing something that's important.
Yep.
I'm in a situation that's important, that matters.
Yep.
Right.
Everybody gets nervous. Everybody gets stressed out. And if they tell you that they don't get nervous or stressed out,
liars.
They're absolutely lying to you.
Yeah, 100%.
And or they're not
they don't actually
playing
care
for something. Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't care about it.
Yeah.
If you are doing anything in life that you care about, that it matters to you, is important, whether it's a job interview, whether it's like approaching your crush and like asking her out, or you're playing for the championship of the NCAA, right? Like, if it matters to you, you're going to be stressed.
Yeah.
The ones that rise above are the ones that recognize that as like an opportunity,
a positive,
and more importantly, to the context of this podcast and mental performance coaching and mental performance techniques, is how do you handle that?
Right. And handle like being able to be in that frame of mind helps handle the failures better too, because it's like, oh, I didn't pull it off, I choked, whatever. It's like, no, hey, I played well enough to be in a position to where I could, choke from an outside point of view, right?
Sure.
Right? I was there.
The media is going to spin it off as they will. Your haters are going to spin it off.
There's going to be a lot of noise. People but hey, man, you were there, right? Right. So it's like you were in that position. That's a good thing. Having that, so constantly having those perspective shifts, right? Oh, this is a good thing that I'm nervous, right? I'm like, this means that I'm playing for something that matters. If you don't pull it off, you could always refer back to that. Like, hey, like I was in that position. So now, now you can, going back to, for that person, what would the next step be? So you properly diagnose like what went wrong, right? Or not even what went wrong, but just objectively, what frame of mind was I in? Yeah. What frame of mind could I be in to succeed the next time I'm in? And how do I put myself in that situation more often? Sure. Because it goes back to like the experience and the patience, and why athletes hit their prime in their late 20s or early 30s, once they've been in whatever professional career they've been in for a number of years, is because now they have more experience under their belt. So how can I put myself more in that situation? Right. And then it goes back to being prepared, right? So what did I do this week that helped me be more successful, right? I was more prepared, this or that, right? I had less stress throughout the week because I was more focused, I was more prepared. So focusing on getting yourself in that situation more often, right? What is required for you to get in that situation more often? Properly diagnosing everything, right? So that you can improve and you know what the next step is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And kind of to piggyback on that point that you were talking about with, what went wrong, because things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Like objectively, like
Yeah.
hitting the tree.
That's a mistake.
Like
Yeah.
a mistake, right? Like
Yeah.
that went wrong. But having the self-awareness and the reflection to go back, and things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Like
Things will go wrong.
You can call a timeout when your team doesn't have any, or you can run the wrong play or whatever. I mean, sometimes the chips just don't fall your way. Like you might hit the correct shot and you hit a draw and the wind was perfect and it landed it exactly where you wanted to land it, but it hit a divot and it kicked to the left and trickled off or whatever.
Yeah.
You had zero control over that.
Yeah.
So like that wasn't necessarily something that went wrong, but like things can go objectively wrong.
Yeah.
So when we talk about things going wrong and learning from them and putting yourself in that position again, a big concept is learning from failure.
Yeah.
Now, I personally don't believe in the idea of failure as long as, here's the qualifier, nothing is ever a failure in life unless you don't learn something from it.
Yeah.
If you
sometimes you win, sometimes you fail, and other times you learn
something.
You learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you keep making the same mistake over and over again, like the NCAA tournament, again, not to beat a dead horse, but this is a perfect example.
Yeah.
If you had hit the tree,
right,
and the ball had like kicked back and it was like somehow like right back at your feet again, and then you like doubled down on that and you're like, no, like I'm pretty sure I can, and you hit the tree again.
Yeah.
Right.
Imagine. Yeah.
Instead of just being like, okay, well, I'm going to pitch it out now.
Yeah.
Like it might've been a different lie. Like maybe you didn't have a shot anymore or whatever, but like if you were so hard headed that you learned something from that first shot, like, okay, like I better cut my losses now and just pitch it out. Like, tried that, didn't work, whatever. Or maybe it's in a future round. You find yourself in a similar situation and you recall on that memory bank, like, oh, this is what happened last time,
right?
Which is the self-awareness and the preparation and the perspective and all this kind of stuff that we're tying together.
Yeah.
The next time that happens, you're probably going to have the wisdom to be like,
I remember last time,
should probably just pitch it out here and play it safe.
And that goes back to like the perspective too, having that like where it's like you either win or you learn, right? That's a perspective that you're saying like failure is not failure unless you don't learn.
As long as you learn something. So that's a critical takeaway, certainly for the listeners, any level, right? Of any sport, golf or otherwise.
Yeah.
Having a growth mindset, which is not a concept that we've talked about so far on this podcast, but a growth mindset is the belief in your ability to get better, right? And having an understanding that everything is a learning process, right? So I either win, I succeed, and we can still learn things when we win. Oftentimes it's easier to see where we could improve from losses, but oftentimes you might be so far ahead that you played the last two holes terribly, but you had a four-shot lead and you won anyways. You can still learn something there. But the point that I'm trying to make is like, as long as you learn something, you're going to put yourself in a better perspective or a better position moving forward. So take your bumps and your bruises. Nobody succeeds the first time at anything.
Nobody.
The first time you walk, you fell over 1 million times. Anybody that's ever learned how to ride a bike or ski or snowboard or do anything that's challenging, everybody that's a master now was once a beginner and had to learn the hard way. But as long as you learn something, you're going to be better next time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like really putting that focus on learning. Yeah, for sure.
So it's critical in really development. And becoming the best version of yourself that you can be, which I think maybe is something that you possibly struggled with. Because you were so sort of physically gifted and it kind of came naturally to you and you were just kind of good at it.
And that's kind of like, that's looking back. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody, like there's hard work, smart work will always outperform talent. Always.
Right. So the hardest workers, like, I mean, you see this a lot.
Smartest workers,
You see this a lot in professional sports. Guys will get drafted like first overall. And it's true. Some of them, the LeBron Jameses and the Kyrie Irvings, these guys that get drafted first overall, like they're
But what was Tom Brady? Like a fifth round?
Mr. What do they call it? Mr. There's a term for it.
Yeah, I don't know.
When you're picked last, it's like Mr. In
DFL, dead freaking last. But yeah, what was Tom Brady? It was 4th or 5th round, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't, like 277th pick.
Yeah.
And work ethic.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's guys that get drafted
His
first
mind,
and think that they can just kind of ride the wave.
Right.
And they're like the biggest, like,
and then
bums.
they make, you know, they're getting $10 to $20 million their first year. You know, it's like, like all of a sudden, you know, like I'm
sure.
You know.
Yeah.
It's like
So
it's like it's almost like there's less to earn at that point. So it's really only like the hungriest guys, the hungriest number one guys who stay there.
Yeah.
Like even LeBron James was still playing. He got, you know, he was number one when he was 18.
Sure.
And he's in his 30s now, and he's still out there. But that just kind of attributes to his hunger to win.
Yeah.
And then
Now we were talking about this earlier off the air.
Yeah.
You had a fairly successful career. You were always pretty good at golf.
Yeah.
You did hit some road bumps.
Yeah.
Along the way.
Yeah.
Particularly like early college.
Yeah.
There was some difficulties that you experienced, and a lot of people will experience some things like this, whether it's academically or personal life stuff. So I did want to talk about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people, real quick before we kind of get into that, can look at a professional athlete and look like, oh geez, like wow, they're so successful. They must have just been so natural, you know, natural talent. They must have always been good.
The tip of the iceberg.
Nothing ever got in the way, this and that. But the reality is, like, you know, even people such as yourself, and I want you to share this story, run into some things along the way where maybe their talent wasn't quite carrying them as much as it could have, or, you know, other things got in the way. So, you know, maybe our listeners have experienced something similar to what you're about to share.
Yeah.
If you could, you know.
Yeah. So it was like my freshman year of college. I'd just gotten, you know, recruited. I just started on the team. So at that point, I was a little bit complacent, because it's like, oh yeah, first of all, I walked on to the team. I wasn't on a scholarship, but I mean, in my mind, you know, I'm on the team. Yeah. Right. Of course,
in
I'm
high
on the team.
school, you were just blasting, like you were just the best player on your high school.
Yeah, best player in my high school. Like I was probably like top 2 or 3 in the county. You know, like winning tournaments. You know, just, you know, and then, you know, my freshman year, I'm like, oh, I'm on the team. Like I'm on the team now. Like this is I'm here now.
Walked on, no scholarship.
And then my first semester of college, you know, I'm excited. You know, I'm like, whatever, out of the house, you know, meeting people.
Sure, it's college.
Like, let's be real, right? I mean, but so I kind of, you know, slacked off a little bit. I got like a below a 2.0 GPA. I got a 1.92. So before every tournament, we would have like these qualifying rounds. It was like typically 4 rounds, and where the whole team would play against each other. The top 2 finishers automatically went to the tournament, and then coach had 3 picks. So as a freshman, it's going to be very difficult to be a pick because he has nothing to work off of, right? So you pretty much have to finish in the top 2 to play in the tournament, travel.
He's probably not going to have like confidence in like, oh, Nahum's like, you know, my guy, even though you didn't finish.
Oh yeah, that's my guy. Yeah,
just like put it on you.
Dude, you know, we're going to give you a chance. Like, why should he? Like, you haven't played in a single tournament.
Yeah.
So I didn't finish in the top 2 in any of them. I actually finished like close to last in all of them. Like struggled in school. At the end of the semester, he brings me into his office. He's like, hey, as easy as it was to get you on this team, it's just as easy to get you off. It's like, I don't need you. Right.
In as many words.
Pretty much. Like, yeah, you think you're on this team now, but tomorrow you could just as easily be off of it. Like, if I say so.
And so how did that?
So all of a sudden, that's a big wake up call, right? And he was serious. It's like you could feel it, like you could hear it. He was pissed. Like not even pissed. He was just like the fact that he wasn't pissed, like made it even more real.
He was just like
cold. Yeah. Just like, hey man, like, you know, like there's 12 other guys on this team who want it just as like way more than you do, clearly. Like, and we could probably bring someone else on, transfer, who wants it just as much. It's like, you know, like I don't need you right now.
Yeah.
So it's up to you, really. Like, so that was a big wake up call. So then that off season, I worked as hard as I had ever worked in my life up until that point, right? So there's probably 2 months between tournaments, like in the fall to the spring. And the spring is kind of like the bulk of the golf season in college.
Yeah, like fall is kind of like
There's probably 3 or 4 events. Yeah. They all matter.
Qualifiers are kind of like seeding. Like
yeah,
that
exactly,
kind of stuff.
exactly. And then you know, and then the fall there's like 10 events, you know, where you're traveling all the time and, you know, playing a lot more. And then there's obviously the winter break beforehand. So I worked super hard, right? That winter break.
Academically?
Both.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like I had my classes for the next semester. So I was like, you know, kind of preparing as much as I could prior to that, to those classes. Really like buckle down because I felt, you know, kind of like the consequence of not being on this team anymore. It's like, hey, like I was given this opportunity, like how it would be a shame to throw it all away, right? So quickly, so early. So it's like,
as quickly as it arrived, it could be gone.
Could be gone, right? So, and then we get spring season starts. So we have our qualifier for the first event, and I finished second. I remember, I finished second, and even coach was kind of shocked. He was like, "Hey, like, where has this been? Where the hell was this?" Like,
so you were focused.
Very focused, very focused. That was the first time in my life, really, where I was like, and it took a mistake on my end for me to have that shift, right? So kind of going back.
Failure.
Almost, right? So, I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but I definitely was learning through my failure, right? Looking back now, it's like, you know, I took it as a learning experience rather than like as something that could hold me back.
Sure.
So, and then I played really well in that tournament. I remember it was in Palm Springs and played really well, and that kind of solidified my spot on the travel team, which is like the top 5 guys of the team for the rest of my freshman year. I ended up earning some awards, like recognition within the conference, right? I think I was contending for like freshman of the year as well. So, but that all came from being like this, like so close to being cut.
Yeah.
To being cut.
Yeah.
So
you took what could have been perceived as like a really negative experience.
Yes.
Now, obviously, it would have been even more negative had you been cut, and who knows
where my life goes
at that point.
Yeah.
But that was definitely like a setback.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That was definitely like not optimal.
No.
You know, nobody likes to be called into the office to be like,
yeah,
hey, look, you know, but you didn't let that like derail you.
No.
It kind of refocused you.
Yeah, it refocused me. And I was actually like, you know, on the academic side, I was a scholar athlete that year, which means like I had like that semester. So I think my GPA the second semester was like 3.5.
Yeah.
Right. Coming back from a 1.92.
Yeah.
So I was like, so all around, like I just had this huge bounce back. And that actually helped me a lot going forward because it gave me confidence that I could bounce back.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of put those situations of like, oh, I could lose what I have, but I could also, you know, use it to put a fire, like, you know, put a fire in my belly or whatever to work harder and be more focused.
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of the times it's like, you know, I don't know, like kind of going back to the perspective of failure, right? I think a lot of the times, like the fear of the consequence of missing is greater than the desire of the reward, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. It's a good thing. Like actually, like statistically, even on the PGA Tour, you take a 6-foot putt. Statistically, they make it more when it's for par than it is when it's for birdie. So what does that mean? It's like the fear of bogey is greater and they perform better under that than the reward of birdie.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. It's a legit stat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the experience with your coach and the sort of almost being cut from the team was more motivating for you.
Exactly.
Than had he brought you in there and you were playing well and he was like, oh, like if you play, you know, better, we could put you on a scholarship or when now I think you were.
I did earn a scholarship after that semester, actually.
After that semester.
So I went from, in one semester, about to being cut to, hey, we found some money in the scholarship.
So it's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where did that come from?
Exactly. Hey, so you know, you're you know, I got like a 50% scholarship.
Yeah.
So I was like, thank you. Yeah, I was grateful.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden I'm more on the hook
Yeah.
with this team. So it's
Sure.
like, it was kind of their way of keeping me as well to
Yeah.
prevent me from transferring or whatever.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So now I'm on the hook. So that now all of a sudden keeping that, like, I know what I have now, I know what I can lose, is what helped me maintain motivated, stay motivated, and work hard.
Right. So that would be negative experience.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people have.
Yeah.
I mean,
That turned out being positive.
Life, generally speaking, it's difficult.
Yeah. Life is suffering.
Sport is difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, life is suffering, however you want to look at it. Like,
Yeah.
life is difficult. It's challenging. Everybody's going to be thrown different challenges. But, sort of tying this back into perspective, it's all in how you look at it.
Yeah.
How you deal with it.
How you deal with it.
You take those lessons and you learn something from them, and
Yeah.
you apply it to your future, and you ended up, sort of maybe your trajectory from that point forward maybe outperformed what it would have been.
Yeah.
If the coach had never brought you in and you were not poorly performing, but you were kind of just like, middle of the road.
You just kind of give me a chance.
You might have kind of just kept floating along.
Right,
But
it might have been, yeah.
But because you were sort of threatened, for
Yeah,
lack of
pretty much,
another
yeah.
term, to like be kicked off the team,
Yeah.
it basically like
Yeah.
set you off and put you on a different trajectory.
Yes.
That maybe put you above where you would have been otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's kind of funny because I just rode that wave throughout the rest of my career in college. So sophomore year, I had a fairly successful year. I mean, I was kind of, in terms of like collegiate rankings, kind of middle of the road, maybe like above average, slightly above average as a player, kind of like hovering around the top 200 in the country, top 150. And then actually my junior year, I started working with a new coach at that time, swing coach, at the conclusion of my sophomore year, and I was making swing changes, and I freaking struggled my first semester of my junior year. I didn't travel at all for the first time since the first semester of my freshman year. So again, I had a huge dip where everyone was like, "What's going on? Like, this guy is like usually like our solid like 4 or 5 guy, 3 or 4 or 5 guy on the team, and now all of a sudden he's like shooting in the 80s in qualifying, literally playing like a 10 handicap. Like, what the hell's going on?" And at that point, I felt fear again, where I was like, "Geez, am I going to be able to come back from this? It's like, is this the right thing? Am I heading in the right direction with this swing change?" But I buckled down, and again in that off season, I had another like boot camp, right? Where it's like, I'm like, and that's kind of like, stubbornness can be good at times, or persistence and patience. I had to be really patient, and trust that what I was doing was the right thing. And it clicked in that off season, and that second semester, that was the year I was a second team All-American. I was one of the top 10 players in the country. I led the national championship for 3 rounds. And that all came after I had like the worst the worst semester since I first started playing on the team, right? So it happened again. And but I was able to draw back on that experience from, hey, like, I feel like I felt this before, where I felt it slipping, and I was able to bounce back. So having that perspective, learning from those failures before in the past, I was able to do it again.
Yeah.
And have the most successful semester of my career and be one of the top players in the country.
Yeah. Or learning from not even failures, but just kind of learning that sometimes it takes a couple steps backward.
Yeah.
Or sideways.
Yeah.
To see the path forward and understand that it's not always just like,
it's not going to be,
you're not always going to be the best, to what you said earlier about like, you're the best in high school, but then when you get to college, you're not the best anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're the best in college, when you get to the pros,
you're
not the best.
You're
anymore.
really not the best.
We're talking about like the razor thin margin of like best of the best of the best of the best.
Yeah.
Like 0.00001% of athletes go pro. So at every level you go up, like, you're not the best anymore. You're like average or below average.
Yep.
So,
So there's constantly setbacks throughout your career, right?
And then how do you handle them?
them?
And learn and grow stronger and like hit that next level.
Exactly. Hit that next level. And it all kind of ties into what we've been talking about: perspective, properly diagnosing what your mistakes are, where you're making your mistakes, what you need to improve on, really. And patience, and just being patient, right?
Yeah.
And just buckling down and pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could sort of leave our listeners with, let's say top three takeaways from today's podcast. Through your experiences as a golfer, retrospectively looking back, and what you've learned now. We've talked about sort of self-awareness, and self-perception, preparation.
It's almost like 3 P's. It's like preparedness or preparation, perspective, patience.
Yeah.
I mean,
is that a thing?
I don't know if that's a thing, but it sounds like a thing now.
Sure.
Sounds like a thing now.
Preparation, perspective,
and patience.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's a thing, but it sounds like a thing now.
Sure.
Right? Maybe we just made it up.
Everybody's got the physical. I mean, there's, physical talent is being what it is, but like you can only take it so far as.
If you're not prepared, right? If you're not patient, and if you don't have the right perspective.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think that pretty much sums it up.
That pretty much sums it up. And like, it just, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Because I think that'd be the biggest takeaway. And to add to that would be, being able to identify properly, like what your mistakes are or where you can improve.
Sure.
Right. Like
self-awareness.
And that kind of comes back to like, sometimes you need an outside perspective.
Yeah.
Right. So coaching, having somebody by your side at all times who you could, after each match, after each tournament, after each, whatever event, where you could come back, review it, analyze it really with somebody else who's looking at it from an outside perspective and offer you proper feedback so that you can identify really where you need to improve on.
Yeah.
So then you could put your focus and attention on that.
Yeah.
And that's the quickest way to improve. Is having your focus and attention in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a concept we refer to as deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, there's like this whole 10,000 hour rule about like practice to become the master or something.
But where are you spending those 10,000 hours?
Right. So if you're practicing the wrong things, you're not going to be a master. So practicing just for practice sake, like, I'm like a weekend warrior golfer. Like I shoot in the 90s, right? But like, let's say I just go to the range and I just hit golf balls. Like I'm practicing, but like I'm not practicing the right things. And so the concept of deliberate practice, specifically practicing either, it can be by yourself, but usually with a coach.
Right.
Practicing something specific, first of all.
Yeah.
Getting immediate feedback on whether it's working or not, whether you're doing it correctly or not. Yeah. And then immediately applying that feedback and then practicing the new thing again.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the essence of improving and practicing the correct way. Yeah. The sort of correct way, which I believe is what you're talking about in terms of like having an awareness. Because you can't know what to fix unless you have sort of an outside source or some other sort of self-reflection or awareness of what you're doing right or wrong to fix it.
Yeah. And I that's exactly right. Having like your awareness and your knowing what you're working on. I remember I played with a pitcher. He was a former pitcher in the MLB. He was a starting pitcher, Japanese guy. God, I can't remember his name. Played for the Mariners, but so I asked him like, so how would you practice? Because like when you're a pitcher, starting pitchers typically pitch like once every 5 days because it's so detrimental to their arm, playing one game. It's like it really causes damage every time they play. So it's like, how would you practice? Because it's like, how do you like find that balance of like maintaining your health, but also improving? So he told me that his practice consisted of like, he would limit himself to 25 pitches.
25 full speed pitches.
25 full speed pitches. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So it's like, how does that look like? So he was like, before every single pitch, because I knew how much each pitch mattered towards my improvement, I dedicated like so much time and attention and focus on to what exactly I wanted to do. So it would take him like over an hour to throw 25 pitches, but because he was so limited, he had to focus so much on what he was doing. And I took that towards my golf, my practice. So now when I practice, I don't really focus on like what my swing's doing. Really, I focus on like where the golf ball's going, and I look for patterns so that now I go to the golf course. I'm aware of these patterns, so I know kind of where to aim, where to favor, like what my misses are. So that allows me to kind of play smarter, right? And like less stressfully.
Yeah.
So like allowing yourself less reps, right? But putting more focus onto each rep is more valuable than having more reps. Right. Junk volume.
Right.
You know.
So rather than just going to the range and hitting 1,000 golf balls and just stepping up and hitting another one and hitting another one and hitting another one.
Yeah.
Focus on what you want to do with each
specific
shot.
Yes.
Do I want to draw it? Do I want to fade it?
Yeah.
Visualizing maybe what this would look like on the actual course. Mm-hmm. Is there water in the way? What's the wind?
Yeah.
What are the specific conditions around this shot? I need to land it within this with backspin.
Sure. Yeah.
And just doing that is going to be more effective practice
than just swinging away. Yeah, exactly.
Now there is something to be said about building the muscular endurance and there is, and I don't want to take away from the actual physical
for
piece,
sure. Yeah,
because there is a physical part of sports. Like
always.
You do need to be an elite athlete.
Yeah.
To compete.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be a mental expert and show up on the PGA Tour and
right. But how much
compete.
But like quarterbacks, like how much of their practice involves looking at film?
A lot.
Right. So
I can't say for sure,
I have no idea either, but I mean I know that they spend a lot of time doing
certainly
it.
A lot memorizing plays and communication with their teammates so everybody's on the same page. That's a whole different kind of right. Football, obviously, being a team sport,
right?
Like communication, chemistry, team building, cohesion, all of these kind of things like that. Team sports are a bit different than golf, obviously being sort of an individual sport. So there's a lot of different other mental aspects that go into that. But it's related to how you perform.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with how physically gifted you are.
Exactly. Like how much of a quarterback's ability to throw a football really makes him a great quarterback, right? It's probably a much smaller percentage than we actually think.
Sure.
Right. So it's kind of like they probably do it all the time. It's like, well, was that really the right play? Like, what was I thinking in that moment under the pressure? Should I have thrown it out at that point? Sure. Should I hand it off to somebody else? Right. So it's like I feel like a lot of the times they're not really focused on like their actual like throwing mechanics and ability. Of course, it's important.
It's natural.
Yeah.
Or it's not natural, but it's just sort of
ingrained.
It's ingrained.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's an automatic skill that they've developed. They don't think about how they're going to throw the ball, just like you don't think about how you're going to swing the golf club when you're out there.
Right.
That's very physical. It's just natural. As a matter of fact, when you overthink it, sort of we're jumping around topics here, but when you overthink something like that is when you often mishit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you try to aim it. Like a pitcher tries to like aim the pitch instead of just letting it go.
Exactly. And that comes back to like kind of your pre-shot routine, pitching, maybe he just focuses on his grip and his release, right? Just kind of having 1 to 2 points that you focus on, right? And then trusting
the rest of the process.
Yeah. And then just letting it happen.
Yeah.
Right. Like a quarterback, like I've watched the film, I've looked at the playbook, I have it memorized.
Yep. Preparation. Patience.
Perspective.
Perspective. Yeah, sorry. Well, I mean, there's a lot of P's here. So preparation, preparation, patience, perception, practice.
Perspective. Oh, yeah. I guess it would be like preparation, perspective, patience. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's just about it.
Right on, man.
Is there anything that you'd like to maybe discuss that we haven't? Any kind of
No,
final
no,
takeaways outside of those P's that we discussed?
Yeah, man.
Preparation,
The 3 Ps.
perspective, and patience.
The 3 Ps of all-star mindset, man. You know, just follow through on those, and
Yeah.
that's
All right.
it.
Sounds good.
All right, dude.
Nahum, really appreciate you taking the time to be
Thank
here
you,
today.
man. No, yeah, it was fun.
Thanks
It's
again.
really fun. Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
All right.
All right, man.
All right.